Welcome to the MMA Roadshow, episode number 275. My name is John Morgan. Cold coffee is with me, and as an added bonus, a little hot tea as well.
Lovely stuff.
Hanging out at the Constant Cold Coffee, it is Oscar Willis from the Mac Live. Excuse me, Oscar Willis from the World MMA Awards nominated The Mac Live.
Had my cherry popped, finally.
Congratulations.
It's exciting stuff, but as well to you guys, congratulations on the nomination once
you,
again.
Sir. Thank you, sir.
And a personal one to you, John.
I appreciate it. Yeah, it's exciting. I mean, obviously, I know in my category it's a little difficult to overcome the mountain that is Ariel Helwani, but I did get my one trophy back early in the day, and they can never take that away from me. I got the very first one, but I always say, and I mean it, I'd rather win the team award. To me, that's like the championship versus the MVP. You know what I mean? The MVP is cool. That's nice and all. But at the end of the day, you want to win the big one. So even though we're in direct competition right now, I guess, for that vote, I'll still say, hey, please go out and vote for us. If you want to vote for the Mac Live, I can't hate.
I
but
feel
we
like
would
if
prefer,
somebody ends up getting buried in an Abu Dhabi desert and
that could be a number of reasons.
Well, I guess no, never mind, because your outlet would still exist. It'd be different if one of the journalists happened to get buried.
And let me just defer for a moment here. I mean, something that some people might not realize, and I'll be the first one to point it out, even though it's downing us a little bit. I have been to all of the pandemic area MMA events except for one because I was on furlough. You have been at every single one of them, so I will give it. Oscar Willis is the pandemic MMA champion. Now, we had coverage at MMA Junkie, so we still deserve your vote. Cold Coffee filled in for me on the week I was off, but I just want to give props where props are due. I know I'm kind of known as an Iron Man, but, I mean, the pandemic era Iron Man is you, sir.
Listen, when you have epics like Jessica I versus Cynthia Calvillo, someone has to be there, and I refuse to hear otherwise. But personally, I mean, obviously people listening to this should vote for you, rightfully so. And either way, we have a mountain to climb in ESPN. I mean, they've got, I think they've got maybe just a little bit bigger budget. I don't remember.
Slightly bigger budget.
But either way, it's I'd like to thank the Academy. I'd like to thank my parents. It's just such an honor to be nominated.
It's got to feel good, though. I mean,
Yeah,
listen, for those of you that followed along the way, I mean, you've kind of, I don't want to say built the thing from scratch because you weren't on the ground floor. There were some people that laid some groundwork before you. But I feel like it's really flourished kind of since you took the reins.
Well, I was the first guy they ever hired, but the other people got hired that had a bigger profile than me.
Okay.
But I will say, in terms of being nominated, I don't think it's in the Mac Live's short but eventful history. I don't think we're ever going to really get here. So it's pretty cool to be recognized and. It does feel like a bit of vindication for the work.
That's awesome, man. Yeah, as anybody that listens to this knows, man, you grind shoulder to shoulder right there with us, man. So you deserve it. Is the boss man? Has the boss man chimed in yet? Is he?
I couldn't confirm or deny. You know what I mean? He's retired, John. He's retired.
He's been doing other things. Doesn't even focus on MMA anymore.
I don't. Probably doesn't even notice. No, I will say, to be honest, like on a personal level, that we're nominated and stuff, but I feel as such a young outlet, it is mainly me and maybe John Balfe who writes some articles. You guys have got a whole team, so if it wasn't for the fact I was nominated, I think you guys deserve it. I think the work you put in this year, especially bringing in Farah and Nolan, who are both absolutely excellent, I think it would be it would not be an injustice to see you guys picking it up this year.
I appreciate that.
And now neither of us are going to win, and it's
we're definitely not. You know what? I am bummed, man. You know, people talk about the World MMA Awards in various ways, and some people say it's just a popularity contest, whatever. I will say I'm gonna miss the ceremony this year, and I should say they're still tentatively saying we're gonna try to do it in October. I think we all know where we stand in the world right now. I don't feel like, especially in the United States, and hell, especially in Las Vegas, our numbers in Nevada, it just seems like we're going the wrong way. I'm going to miss it, man. I know some people talk trash about the World MMA Awards, whatever. I enjoy it, man. Getting, the one time a year I get dressed up in a suit. It's always funny because it's happened to me a couple times where I put the suit jacket on and I reach in the pocket and I'm like, what the hell is in here? And it's the ticket from the previous years because it's still sitting in there because it's the only time I wear a jacket. I'm going to kind of miss that a little bit. We'd have fun.
I was talking to Jim Edwards yesterday and he's saying, I hope John brings his friend. It's the only time me and Jim have ever met your friend. And last year, he got me drunk before I interviewed Dolph Lundgren.
Yes.
So I was slurring on Dolph Lundgren's shirt, being like, how are you going to beat Rocky? And stuff like that.
Yeah. That is my boy, Tony. He's a big MMA fan, and he loves coming with me, and he's my +1 every year. My wife has gone enough times, so she doesn't really worry about it anymore. So we go together, and we go hang out. And I think he helps me have a really good time as well because we have plenty of cocktails. One year, he walked up to Jeremy Piven and told him that like he owned the theater that the thing was being held in, and Jeremy Piven was like, "Oh, we got to take a picture together," you know.
Oh,
He's like, "Well,
Jesus.
if you insist." So Tony's that kind of guy where he just goes out and has a little fun. And
I think
hustles.
that was the same year Danny Austin and I called Jeremy Piven a cunt.
Oh, Danny Austin.
He was rude to Heidi Fang. What are you going to do, man?
Miss seeing Danny
Piven
Austin.
was?
show.
Yeah, he was rude to Heidi Fang.
What did he do to Fang?
He said something like, He said something like, "Oh, you got Francis Ngannou, the body of a Greek god, and me, the body of a Greek salad." And she said, "How do you have a body of a Greek salad?" And then he looked at her and was like, "Do you want to try that again?" And I think Danny Austin, who'd had a few beers, was like, "What did you fucking say?"
Wow.
So he was upset that she didn't get the joke or whatever?
Yeah, I think that she underplayed his joke. And then I think Danny Austin was like, "Don't talk to Heidi like that."
That's awesome.
Amazing. This is the type of hard-hitting MMA reports that you really want to get. By the way, I should say, speaking of Conor McGregor, I just came from this morning doing a filming project, documentary. I was just interviewed as part of it. It was all socially distanced. It was kind of crazy. I'd been talking to the producer. He originally wanted to come out and do the interview in person, but obviously that doesn't make sense. So he stayed back in New York, and we did it via Skype. But he had like a production team in there that was shooting it. Well, 2 people, I should say, production team. They kept their mask on. They stayed 6 feet. All the things that you got to do. But it was funny. I ended up interviewing for like an hour and a half. I don't know who all they talked to for this thing, but I don't even know if I'm supposed to be talking about it.
I was about to say. I was looking at you like,
I don't think I signed anything, so whatever. But anyway, there is this documentary project being done. But it was funny. There, at one point, they talked about the lifestyle and like how Conor really, once he started getting money, he embraced, having the flashy cars and having and I did kind of subtly work it in. I was like, you might could say he was living the Mac life.
"Oh, you beauty." You beauty. We'll chop that. We'll steal that. And we'll put that in the package for the award.
So if that doesn't make it in the final cut, you need to reach out to him, and maybe you can use that as a promo.
That'd be unreal.
That's great. So listen, Cold Coffee is busy grinding away. You and me, we're hanging out today. We just got our COVID-19 test done.
Is that number 12?
I think 10 for me and 12 for you because I missed the 2 on the week that I didn't go.
It might be 13 for me then. No, it is 12. It is 12.
Yeah.
There you go.
6 here, just a lowly 6.
You got 6 tests.
I know, right? Three Vegas shows.
We collectively, all of us, probably have more tests than 99.9% of the world.
Of people in
It's
Vegas.
crazy.
Yeah.
Like
What's funny, when I went to go eat the other day and I was telling the guy about...
I've had more than Dana.
It's crazy, right?
I just realized.
Which is really crazy. Yeah, I was talking to one of the guys, and he was like, he was wearing his mask, and he was like, I don't know how I feel, because there's uncertainty until you go and get your first test.
Yeah.
There's always that uncertainty. You're like, well, if I did, I'm obviously I'm still good. But when you know that you've been tested, then it's like sort of a badge of honor.
Yeah.
You're like, yeah, I've been there, I've done that, I know I'm good.
It's funny when
My circle's good.
It's funny when you've had enough tests that you can feel a difference in the guy administering to it. Like, so today I'm like, "Oh, you went a bit deep there, sir." It's a bit weird.
Yeah, you did.
There was a test one time where I was like, the guy didn't really swab the right spot. I didn't feel it that much.
There was
a
a couple. I was like, "Listen, you half-assed that. Get in there."
I was like, we need to know for sure, sir. Get in there.
Yeah, it's we've definitely done quite a bit. And from what we are hearing, we're going to do quite a bit more. We're still learning, and I kind of wanted to share because, really that's what this is about. There's no big fights this week, so it's really just about the anticipation of the trip to Fight Island. Like I said, we did have to take a test. That test has to come back negative before we can even go on the plane.
Yep.
And from what we understand, the best we can tell, and we really literally kind of just got the documentation literally right before we started recording, but it sounds like we're going to land, immediately be tested at the airport before we ever leave the airport. We go to the hotel. We quarantine, so it specifically says do not leave your room. So it does not say stay in the building. It says do not leave your room for 24 hours. After that 24-hour period, somebody is going to come visit our rooms individually, test us again, and then we have to stay quarantined for another 24 hours. So it's 48 hours total that we're told not to see anybody at all, and that'll be 2 tests done on the ground in Abu Dhabi, plus the 1 before we left.
Yeah, and there's nothing quite like coming off an international flight and then having to sit there in a line as 80 people get their throat tested at 11:30 at night local time. Then you have to get a bus to your actual place. You're going to be so tired by the time you get there.
It's going to be...
And then like you said, 2 nights in a hotel room.
Crazy. Certainly not complaining. It's part of the gig, but
Sound like
I am.
I know.
Sound like you're fucking complaining.
I can see the the anger over there in Cold Coffee's face, just being like, bro, it's not that big of a deal. And it's not that big of a deal, but it'd just be a little bit weird. I think we're all going to kind of be figuring out as we go along. So we'll definitely document. I think, we did the first week in Florida, we did like a running journal on MMA Junkie of kind of like what the experiences were. I think we'll probably do the same thing here. I don't know if we'll go all the way through the 3 weeks, but certainly the first week. 'Cause I know everybody's going to be curious, right? What does the place look like? What is, how are things being handled? I'm curious. I want to know what it looks like. I mean, we know, for instance, that the octagon on the beach, I think by now everybody's figured out the octagon on the beach is there, but it's really just kind of a prop more than
aesthetic.
anything. Yeah, exactly. It looks good, but the fights themselves are indoors. It's not. There's no concern of rain.
You guys use the octagon for like a preview show?
That's a good question.
Or is it only for fighters?
Well, your equipment would melt to the ground first, and then secondly, you would too. It's outside. It's very hot.
By the way,
do it at midnight.
He was just doing a temperature check.
Yeah.
It's 1 a.m. as we sit down to record this right now in Abu Dhabi. The feels like right now at 1 a.m. in the morning in Abu Dhabi was like 103, I believe. But he said that during the day it shows that it's going to get up to a feels like temperature with the humidity of 130 degrees.
Yeah, and then that was only at 56% humidity, which is low for Abu Dhabi, and then in the evening it's 76%. So, but I mean,
midnight shoots.
I would like to. Well, it's no doubt what the time schedule we're going to be on.
Yeah, we probably will be up more. I imagine we'll probably be operating more in the nights because all the fight cards, again, something if you're not aware, all the fight cards are going to happen prime time United States time. So we'll be fighting. I think most of the cards were from like 2 a.m. to 6 a.m. or 2 a.m. to 7 a.m. or something like that in the morning.
Yeah, I think it's like doors open at 3, so you get there at 2. I don't know. But yeah, it's going to be
doors open to who?
Yeah, yeah, good point. Tent flaps open. But I just think. Yeah, like you said, it's going to be a learning on the job sort of experience.
For sure. I guess important to note too, we always talk about the journalistic side of things a little bit. We are flying on a charter jet that the UFC arranged as part of the bubble, but they are not providing our transportation for us. We were actually invoiced by the UFC, and we are paying the UFC. So if there's any concern, I know sometimes people, there's conflict of interest here, that sort of thing. I know you guys don't have the same corporate structure, but you guys came to the right conclusion. But obviously we're owned by USA Today. They had to have big discussions about whether this was even okay.
And the same for the hotel as well. We have to pay for the hotel.
Yeah,
too.
Exactly. Everything has to be paid for. So it's being arranged through them, but then we are paying for it on top of it. So I just think that's important to note because I could think maybe some people kind of casually tune in and be like, wow, bro, they're putting you on a plane, they're putting you in a hotel. Yes, this is all a private thing, but
they were so understanding in Jacksonville. We didn't hear anything bad about that. So
do you know what you guys are flying?
Yeah, it's Etihad charter plane, I think.
Yeah, an Etihad charter that leaves out of McCarran Airport tomorrow night. So we go to the commercial terminal, but even then, the instructions are like, by the way, here's the door that you're going to use. It's on this side of the airport. It's all been blocked off. There is no. I think they even said there's no flights even leaving out of the terminal at that time. So the terminal is going to be like completely empty. You go to this gate. So they're really working to keep that bubble, man. It's a lot of instructions.
Is it going to be staff or is there fighters on that one?
I think staff, yeah.
I think fighters.
And fighters too. Yeah.
I saw Gilbert Burns at
the
so
hotel.
Everybody on that one flight.
Well, they're staggered. So from what I understand, like if you're fighting on the final card, for instance, it's not like you're flying over right now. They're sending people over in waves.
I wonder if you could ask to get acclimatized. I wonder if you could say like, look, please let me get on that first flight.
Imagine you could, unless it was just space limitations or whatever. Which I would, if I was fighting on that fourth card, I think I'd want to go over. It's a long trip, and as you said, man,
So you're each gonna get like your little row.
Yeah,
I think so. I think they're going to try to socially distance the flight itself as well, so we're all staying away from each other, wear a mask the whole time.
But if you haven't been to the Middle East, like until I went to Abu Dhabi in September, I would never have thought about this. But the whole climatized thing, you need. If I was a fighter, I would not feel comfortable going the week of because it is so hot. It's so different, the humidity and everything. So I'd probably try and get it a week earlier, maybe. I don't know.
I remember what they told us last time. You remember after the first couple fights, fighters started realizing, don't start warming up. Don't bother warming up early because normally you need to get your muscles loose. You need to get stretched out. It's just a waste. You're just sapping yourself of energy because it's so hot, even though there's air conditioning in there. Yeah,
and that was like after 3 or 4 days of pure air conditioning on all the time. It was just it's begs belief. And as for flying Etihad, I think this is only something that travelers who extensively travel know. Etihad's the only airline I've ever noticed that has one fold down thing that you can lean your head against in the seat. Usually, it's like the crab pincer thing.
I don't think I've ever been on an Etihad flight before.
Etihad fold down, so you have a whole Headlane. There you go. Something to look forward
I'm
to.
looking forward to that now.
And you get your own row. That's poor man's first class.
but-
Poor man's first class.
As John wants to know, will they be serving alcohol?
That's the key.
I actually don't. Do you know? I don't know if Etihad serves alcohol anyway.
Oh.
I bet they do.
Do they though?
Because listen,
Because those
here's,
flights are been renowned as like really, really top
They're
notch.
not bad. They're
So I
not
would imagine if somebody was going over there, they'd want their first. I just don't know if the UFC is going to pay for them to have that shit loaded onto a plane.
It's not shit.
well,
it's alcohol.
stuff.
it's alcohol.
Because they're going to have to pay for all the food to get stocked on it. I bet they could probably just be like, don't load
every-
it.
Cash bar? Can we do cash bar?
But every
I
flight,
need a couple drinks. I'm trying to pass out on this flight.
every couple of flights I've had, the 2 flights I've had, they didn't give you any service at all. They just gave you a little like school bag and said, "There's an apple in there, eat that." So I wonder if because it's international.
Yeah,
will
like
they
the
still
flights
give-
to Florida when we
That
went
could
down
be because
there.
you're English or something.
No, like American Airlines,
Bigoted.
as you hand on American Airlines was just handing you like a bottle of water and a Biscoff cookie in
Yeah.
a bag.
Yeah.
They weren't. I mean, like they would just hand you the bag with gloves on, and then they just
One
stayed
more
down the whole
reason
time.
I'm glad I'm not working this event.
Oh, you're working the event.
Oh, I'm
You're working it from- you're just working it from
By the
home.
way, I forgot to put in a last minute vacation request for the next
stuff.
4 weeks.
I mean, listen, the first stretch is going to be the hardest, where there's the multiple events, back to back to back.
Yeah, the Wednesday event's going to be a bit of a motherfucker.
Yeah.
And especially as it's 2 in the morning local time to like say 8 in the morning, like just that whole window of time you'll be awake working, and then you got to weigh in the next day that's not on that time frame. It's like 5 p.m. local time. It's just going to be
It's going to be weird.
John and I have honed. And Kenny as well have honed our abilities to go on what is known as a bender the night before to sleep throughout the entire day, so you can wake up sort of. But I just think it's
What is
like,
a bender?
well, in England it means something else. But,
Good point. Good point.
yeah.
Never mind.
But yeah, no, it's the period of adjustment's going to be awkward. And I remember last time it was so hot, and the media was like, luckily that's not going to be a thing. The media presence was so heavy last time for Khabib that by the end of the week I just wanted to get out.
Oh yeah,
So
so packed for
So I'm
Habib.
kind of hoping that if it's not for a UFC thing, I'm probably just going to stay in an air-conditioned hotel, and because I really don't want to burn myself out by week 2 and be like, fuck this, and then have another whole.
I think we're going to end up being there like 23 days or something, so it's going to be kind of got to
Yeah.
pace yourself. It's different than a
How
fight
do
week.
how does do the rooms actually get cold?
Yeah,
Like
yeah,
the
they
air
do.
conditioning
Like,
does
you
actually
can't, you
work?
can't fault the hotels. They're very good. It's just like the issue is, and probably perhaps because you're in an air-conditioned space for so long, when you walk out, it
Yeah.
hits you like a fucking hammer.
Yeah.
And you also can't wear glasses over there. I remember Esther was there, and she was
Glasses
like,
fog up.
I literally have to have Casey lead me because my glasses are just fogged up in a second.
Wow.
It's a very weird place.
Yeah, and again, this is a different venue than what we were fighting in last time. I mean, this is a purpose.
We weren't fighting, John, but
Well,
Is fighting
we
going to be
certainly
over
won't
there?
be fighting. What's that?
Is Casey or Esther going over there for this?
No, I believe they're sending Guilherme Cruz from Brazil.
Oh,
Because
okay.
I believe he was going over there.
Interesting.
there's quite a few like high-profile Brazil fights, right? Aldo.
I was like, please continue. Please continue.
ran out of
Wow. Wow.
That's all right. I wasn't able to follow you. I mean, Burns. I mean, he's
Oh, fucking.
Sort
God
of
damn it.
he's sort of
Burns
Brazilian.
and yeah.
It's a big one. All right, listen. Probably the biggest.
Benavidez.
Who? Gilbert?
Davison Figueiredo.
That's what I said.
Oh, yeah.
I just wasn't.
Yeah.
He's seen.
Another
There you
big
go.
one.
Three title fights for Brazil. There you go.
Yep.
Probably
That
a
is
reason
big.
to send a Brazilian guy.
There you
And
go.
I know Casey and Esther probably, because it's one per outlet. You
Yeah.
know, it's unfortunate for us because we thought Farah Hanoun might be able to come. First of all,
Yeah.
either it would be me and you because we normally cover these events, or if it was, hey, let's save on costs or whatever, hey, we could at least bring Farah Hanoun because she lives in Egypt, which is, I think she was pretty excited. So bummer that she can't go because I think she was kind of excited to maybe get some more on-site practice,
Yeah.
get some more reps and covering
It's
events.
as close as any event ever is going to be.
Yeah.
to
She doesn't
where
get them in
she's
her
at.
backyard, right?
Yeah.
So, but they said very strictly one per outlet. So I was going to say Casey and Esther with fighting probably didn't want to.
I think that was part of the reason. And then also, if you think from an outlet perspective, if it's a case where you can send one person instead of 2, like cost-effective wise, stuff like that. So maybe that came into it. I don't know, but yeah, it's strange, man. And that's one thing about the whole COVID experience. Covering events has been weird because realistically, if you get tested and you're negative, you should be able to interact with everyone else who's done the same thing completely normally.
Yep.
And yet we all have to wear masks over there. We got an email today, you have to wear masks, you have to socially distance when applicable and stuff like that.
Yep.
And it's just quite odd, it's, well, are we tested negative or not? And I'm not one of these people who are like, oh, I want to live my life. I'm quite happy to follow the rules and stuff, but it is just a funny thing that you can only have one person in an outlet because why? If Farah tested negative, there's no reason why she couldn't be there. But
all about space considerations is what we've been
there
told.
you go.
So there you go. And this one we'll have, other than which we didn't have in Florida, we'll have some international media. There'll be some people local. There'll be some people traveling from Europe as well.
So how are they treating foreign outlets to get over there?
Hopefully terribly.
So
Well, I mean, like, you guys are all getting together to ride a charter plane.
So good question. Very, very similar setup in other cities. What they're doing is, correct me if I'm wrong, Sao Paulo, Moscow, and London. So you have to
everybody, all the fighters that are camps. Everybody has to.
And my understanding is, if you go to those, you have to go there and then quarantine, I think, for 48 hours.
So for Vegas, we have to isolate for 24 hours ahead of the flight, and then for Brazil,
When's the flight?
Tomorrow at 9. We still got time. Fucking tricky little boy. No, and then for the international.
You're on the clock.
Yeah, for the international ones, it's 48 hours. But I think the idea being, right, so there's loads of Brazilians fighting. So there's one from Brazil, loads of London or English people fighting. So that's from London, and then I guess Petey Yarn.
He's just on a plane by himself.
Yeah.
They just got like a big,
But I would assume that everyone from Europe is going to Moscow or London.
Yeah. And the other thing, I mean, I think the other thing then
from Europe to Moscow, that's a heavy lift.
Moscow's in Europe.
Yeah, but it's on the opposite side.
Depends whereabouts in Europe, innit?
Yeah.
From well, Germany could go either way, as they've proven in the past. But I mean, like, if you were from the east of Germany, you could probably go to Moscow, and if you're from west, you'd go to London.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think the logic there is just
World War II joke in the podcast. Here we go.
I think the
You
logic,
never know what you're gonna get here.
I think the logic there is to kind of is to have longer for them to quarantine, because they've been in these other countries. They haven't been tested. All the Vegas contingencies, like you said, we just talked about it. I've been tested 10 times. We've been tested 12 times, so that's why they're not requiring us to do the 48. I know I was talking to Vicky the other day, who works for the UFC's PR office. She's in the Europe office, and this was I think yesterday, and she said, "Yeah, I'm already in quarantine. I'm near the airport, but I'm forced to quarantine right now."
Yeah, and to be clear as well, the first fight's on July the 11th. You'd never usually get somewhere on the 5th to cover it, or the 3rd even to cover it. But obviously they need those quarantine days to have us be ready.
It's true. The last thing as far as operations and logistics I want to talk about was the weigh-ins, and just to give people a heads up, if you're one of those gamblers or even just a fantasy picker or whatever the case may be, the weigh-ins are going to be, I guess you'd say, probably about 36 hours more or less, or 30 hours before the event. So it's going to kind of a weird setup, but obviously it ends up being kind of pretty much about the same amount of time that they get to recover now, but because the fights are going to be really, really early on fight day, so we'll say for the first one, Saturday morning, they're going to be like 2 o'clock in the morning is when the first prelim. Instead of having them weigh in at 2 a.m. in the morning on Friday, they're doing it at 5 p.m. On Thursday night. So Friday ends up being kind of a weird day. So you'll actually get a chance to maybe sleep twice. It's kind of just a little bit different. It's the way it's done in New Zealand. I don't think it has a huge impact, because, again, the amount of hours between the weigh-in and the fight really isn't that much more than normal, because I wondered, would it be an advantage to somebody that normally has a rough cut? Are they going to have more time to recover, that sort of thing? So it's going to be stretched out a little differently, but it's more or less the same.
But I tell you what, one thing I think might have an impact, and if they are basically getting people over the week of the fight because they need to keep it as tight as they can, from most fighters I've spoken to, rather, like, flying on a plane bloats you. It bloats you, and it basically takes a day to get rid of that bloat before you can even get to your cut.
True.
So if you're someone like, I believe Jose Aldo's flying out today, and he's a 135er now, so that's someone like that, or anyone who might have traditionally problems with weight. I'm interested to see how not being able to go over a few days in advance could potentially alter that. And then obviously Dana White said, someone falls out, there's no alternative. So this one, there's no one in the backup.
That's right. There's no last minute replacement. So we get any tests, test positive, we get any misses. It's just people that are there already, basically.
Yeah, I'm feeling optimistic about the COVID tests.
Yeah.
Because I realistically, I believe, I know there's the incubation period, but realistically, I would believe if you're going to get test positive, you'll probably test before you get on the plane. So I'm optimistic about that. Well, I'm not super optimistic about no one falling out of a fight. Do you know what I mean?
All right, well, you're feeling optimistic about that. Let me tell you what I'm feeling pessimistic about. The fact that we can't bring any fantastic Latchkey Brewing Company products with us. The fine craft brews that we are enjoying this afternoon, thanks to the fine folks of Latchkey Brewing, most especially our man Anthony Beach, the brewer over there at Tenling. If you're in the San Diego area, 1795 Hancock Street, San Diego, California, I think they're not open again right now because of the whole thing.
Oh.
But they're
Oh,
still
yeah.
selling product. You can't go in and dine and hang out like normally, but you can still pick up to-go orders. And the reason that we're really excited, we used to get these awesome crowlers, these big growlers.
Growlers.
Not a crowler, a growler. We used to get
Growlers.
those big 32 ounce or so he would send to us, and they're great and they're phenomenal. You can still purchase those as well, but now they've got this fantastic canned product here, these smaller cans, these 16-ounce cans, individual size. I mean, for us, the 32 was pretty much an individual size anyway, but this is more suited for the average frosty beverage connoisseur. And I love the artwork on it, man. We started out with the all right. We always like that one. That's we've had that one before, and I love that one, man. That is, of course, the hazy IPA with bright, fresh citrus notes and the earthiness of rye in the background. Hence the all right. See, it's a play on words there.
It's good. It's good.
Now, I have since switched over to the Foggy Pilsner. Got a nice little hoppy frog on it right there. It's a crisp, light, and slightly hoppy Foggy Pilsner featuring Strata, Noble Citra, and CZ size hops. One of these days, we got Anthony on here to explain what all that means because he makes all that stuff.
Speaking of Anthony, is that a picture of him on this? All right. Tell me that does not look like him.
It kind of does.
It kind of
He
does.
might have been the he might have been the
He might have
source,
been
the inspiration.
the model. Yeah.
The inspiration for it. So
I don't know if he's as tattooed as this dude is, but that was delicious. That hazy IPA is
I enjoyed that.
delicious.
Yeah, it's one of my favorites that they make, dude.
This
Everything they do
Pilsner's
is
not
good.
bad. Yeah, this Fogger's a foggy Pilsner, which you could definitely taste it. It's much lighter, but I think everything tastes a little bit lighter after like an IPA that kind of just touches the back of your taste buds. But this is really good.
Kind of like a COVID test.
There you go.
Just touches the back of your taste buds.
Just backing up, just enough.
By the way, he did say, Anthony told me that this product is now shipping to retail. So if you're at a place and you want
These
to get
versions
this
here in these cans?
that's right, this can version.
These
that's
cans
that's
are
what I
like
got.
dope.
They're nice looking. So if you got a place that you purchase, especially in the Southern California area, I don't imagine they're shipping nationwide yet, but yeah, tell your partner there to ask about the Latchkey Brewing because everything they do is good, and he's a solid MMA fan.
Yes, he is. I love the artwork, man. I'm surprised that they don't credit somebody. It's pretty dope.
It is pretty good. All right, listen, I also want to give a quick shout-out as well to our man Kevin Welston, who reached out and said he heard us talking about the mask and about how you should get something with some style to it, and he knows that you're a fellow Buckeye, my friend, so he sent us a couple of Ohio State masks. I'll wear mine begrudgingly. You'll wear yours
Happily.
I think it was more of a gift for you than me, but it turns out he's been a long-time supporter of us and all the way going back to the Tag Radio days. So very official-looking, very nice, and kind of the extra comfortability size. Some of them are a little too small, a little bit too tight. He got these ones that are a lot more comfortable. So shout out.
He did see pictures of us, so we're not the
Yeah,
smallest
he
guy.
knows who we are.
There's I always Diego, which I can't remember the outlet that Diego works with. I always want to bust his balls because he's got like the smallest mask ever, and he's got a giant beard. So you just see the
Brazilian Diego?
Yeah,
Yeah.
Brazilian Diego. Because some of these masks that people work in, it's like they just took a small little napkin and strapped some rubber bands on it. You got to have a good, nice quality mask, and these are good quality masks, representing the finest university in all of the land, the Ohio State University.
Knew he was going to work that plug in there. Look at
I had
that.
to-
Just
I had to
set it
get
up
something
on a
there. I had to
tee
get
for him
something.
right there.
Seattle Community College, my friend.
I'm sure it was a very fine school. What's
Apparently
their
Bruce
mascot?
Lee went there.
Really?
Mascot
Yeah.
in Seattle? It's
Yeah.
like some Antifa person blowing up a corporation, probably.
Maybe not when Bruce Lee went to school there.
Oh, Hot T coming with the hot opinions as well.
This is only beer number 2.
That's crazy, man. When you said you hadn't had any food yet, it might get a little adventurous. He wasn't kidding.
I tried giving him peanuts, but he didn't want anything to get in the way of the buzz.
Eating's cheating. That's the word.
You have to admire the dedication to
It's a craft.
to imbibing the proper way.
Yeah.
I like it.
Yeah.
I like it.
Well, look, I'm about to go. Anyway, yeah, never mind. It's hard to get
Fill in the
drinking.
blank. That's like a meme started. I'm about to fill in the blank of what Hot Tea is about to do. I'm about to.
Deserts are dry. That's all we'll say. Abu Dhabi is a
Ah.
desert, and it can be very dry. It's very expensive over there
I'm
to
sure
buy
you
alcohol.
can find. I'm sure there's local, like once you get.
But we're not allowed to leave the safety zone.
No,
That's the
but
thing.
I'm sure there's some locals that are working there that can hook you up a little something.
So you're saying we should import contraband products
No,
into
I
the
mean,
safety
like-
zone?
Mate, are you
Well, I
having
mean, your
say to a
workers,
local,
the
be like, can
people
you
there.
sort me out a little something?
Yeah, the
You
little
get
side eye,
murdered.
a little side wink, a little wink, wink, a little
Wow,
something.
sir, you have a very different
And you
opinion
should-
of how to handle things. I'm going to bring over a little bit of. You can bring over. I did research it. You can bring over 24 beers, which is, I mean, that's one night sorted.
There's,
you know what I mean?
there's
You can't
that
do
first day sorted.
But you can bring over 4 liters of alcohol. So I think I'm gonna bring over like maybe a little vodka and a little bourbon.
So you actually, all
I-
right. So
I understand.
my question to you:
I understand some proper 12 might be making its way to Abu Dhabi.
are you going to bring a legit luggage?
Yeah. This is the first time I'm gonna check luggage in 10 years.
I can't. I don't think I've ever seen you check a luggage.
I don't check. I carry on everything, but yeah.
Wow.
Just we need so many.
We should
clothes.
document that. You should document that, and we should make like a story about it.
People
the day,
really care about
the
that.
day John Morgan checked the
Check
bag.
the bag. It is historic. People don't
It's
understand
historic.
the type of landmark that's going to be made here.
This is the shit that people listening want to know.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
What
Well,
kind of
what sort of
luggage
luggage are you
does
taking?
John Morgan
Hard
carry?
case, or is he a soft bag?
Do you know, it's the first time I'm checking a bag for a long time. Like I say, it's a hard case, pink little number. Quite excited.
Yeah, I don't doubt that at all.
I sent him a picture.
You never check a bag either.
No.
He's a professional, man. He's got the whole system down. He gets it.
Yeah,
If you check a bag, listen, travelers, if you can get away without checking your bag, do it. You're saving yourself time because
Yeah.
you don't have to get there early to check your bag in. You don't have to wait for the luggage to go off. And here's the other bonus. It's not just that time. If there's changes made to your flights and you need to, like, take something standby or switch
Yeah.
to another plane or whatever, the chances of your luggage making it with you ain't happening. But
Yep.
you can go. So if it's like, I got to sprint through there, like if you got to sprint from one gate to another to get to the airplane, your luggage ain't making it with you. You know
That's
what I mean?
true.
So, like, you're not going to get to the next day. So, yes, travelers, and not to mention just the fact that unless you have status, they charge you like $50, which is ridiculous. Fortunately, we have status, but still,
Some of
for
us
the
do.
flexibility, yeah, well, not anymore. Nobody's flying. But for the flexibility that they offer, if you can get away without checking a bag, you shouldn't check a
Not
bag.
to
But
men-
I'm checking one.
Not to mention when you land,
Yep.
you want to fuck off. You don't want to stay there and like look at a carousel for 20 minutes.
It's,
Like,
it's the favorite part of the trip for me.
yeah.
I love the way that it just shifts and it goes around, and you watch
know-
the little blades come together.
You know what
And
my
then
favorite bit is?
separate.
When your fucking bag doesn't come out and you have to go and talk to them.
Oh, it's
Like,
the fucking
where
worst.
is it? It's in Atlanta. That's
Especially when I have
fantastic.
I usually have 2 bags that I check. I check my tripod and I check my big bag because that's where I have like the gear and like my clothes and stuff. It's the worst because then sometimes something goes to the oversized ones, and sometimes it doesn't. It can get frustrating, but I would feel like I'm forgetting something if I don't have the big luggage where I know I can put everything in.
Yeah.
I always overpack.
I like how we're
anyways.
talking about traveling when it's just like not a thing in the world.
Yeah,
Oh,
right.
so by the way, let's give you this travel advice during a time that nobody is traveling
Listen to this in
whatsoever.
6 months and get your tips.
Well, listen, if you like what you're hearing because of the travel tips especially, and I mean, Cold Coffee obviously hot on the editorial content, knowing what people want to hear, and that's about
Yep.
me checking a bag. Make sure you do us a favor. Make sure that wherever you get your podcast, that you log in there, you take a second to rate us, review us. I use Apple Podcasts, and you can be like our man Dustin Love, who was kind enough to Venmo us some money last week to handle our frosty beverages, and then was kind enough to jump on Apple Podcasts and say, hey, thanks for the shout out on the MMA Roadshow. Perfect with the new fridge, though. Hope you enjoyed. Cheers. Great show as always. Verdun Mass next. I'll save you the worry. So listen, we appreciate Dustin Love, who supported us in our beverage exploits last week, and now is giving us some love. And by the way, over on Patreon.com/the MMA Roadshow. That's how you take it up to the next level. There you can, for as little as $3 a month, you can have access to our and a half episodes. So lots of bonus episodes. I'm sure our man Hot T over there, Oscar, will be with me on plenty of those. They won't even be like late at night when you're falling asleep. It'll be like in the middle of the morning, the afternoon when the sun's up, because we'll be
Jesus.
up from the middle of the night. So yeah, so it won't be such a
Like a night out in Vegas.
it's so great. So we'll have plenty of those. Plus, we're always sharing stuff. I know if you're very curious of what our work setup's like, Cold Coffee started it by sharing a little look at his workstation. I got my new and improved office as well.
Your
Post up
office
there as well.
was looking nice.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir. I put some work in it during the
I
pandemic.
It's funny because I tried looking. I was like, "Where the hell? How does he get behind it?"
Yeah.
It was the way that the image was looking. You couldn't tell that you had walked around the other
Yeah,
side.
there's a
'Cause
little
I was
gap
looking.
on
I was
one
like,
side of it there.
I was like, I don't see how he
Just
works.
slide over the top of it. Just jump over the top.
It's all
of it.
just for looks. It's like going to a museum. Like somebody could work in there.
Yeah, but I mean, obviously nobody can gain access to it. Yeah, I Dukes of Hazzard it right over the hood of it, man.
Right over the top. I like it.
But yeah, join us on patreon.com/MMA Roadshow. Enjoy chatting with everybody over there. By the way, South Cox, I'm a big fan of South Cox.
Yeah, you love your
He
Cox.
actually logged in and said, hey, huge miss on the podcast this week, John. You should have given out your Venmo address. So if anybody wants to be just like Dustin Love, or apparently Mr. South Cox as well, I am on Venmo now. John-Morgan-400. Now, you see, why did I come up with John-Morgan-400? I didn't. I just didn't know how to sign up properly. I would have come up with something cooler, some MMA in there, so something like that, MMA Junkie John. But I'm like
So now you got to work on a story.
now I'm just John. Yeah, there's got to be some 400. That's the number of UFC events I've been to, or something like that.
I was a little upset with the Patreon. I tried putting a comment picture the other day, and it wouldn't let me do it through the phone. I found a toolbox that's a cooler. It's literally badass, but it looks like a toolbox. And I was trying to post to your thing and say, oh, well, just tell D, I got to move the toolbox into the office. And it literally opens up, and it's a small little cooler.
Yeah, because you've got
Total
a cooler
badass.
in here now, which is awesome. But my wife, I think if I tried to put a cooler in my office, she'd realize she'd probably never see me again.
She would never see you.
Yeah.
that is the complete reason. Because if I just thought that, I know she's thinking the same.
She's like, dude, he's not even going to come downstairs to get a beer anymore.
The only time you would come down is for dinner.
That's
something.
it.
She's like, John, dinner?
Yeah.
Come see your family.
Yeah, she would be okay with that. So I don't
what?
I don't think I'm going to have a cooler. Yeah, exactly. What? I got to take my headphones out first. All right, listen, not any fights to talk about. Again, we're going to have a ton of content from Fight Island. And of course, we know it's Abu Dhabi. I'll be honest, I've seen a lot of people like so disappointed. It's just Abu Dhabi. It's still an island. There is still a beach. I don't understand why everybody got so mad.
Well, I was disappointed it was Abu Dhabi.
Well, we know just because of the weather and the travel. And it would be. I mean, look.
They were upset that no indigenous people were murdered for the UFC event. They're like, what do they expect at this time and age? Like, they literally thought like they were gonna find some random
that's what I understand.
deserted
Like, listen,
island. Or
I'm not
something.
excited about the
Maybe
length
in Mexico,
journey.
Island of Carmen or whatever.
That's hardcore down there. I wouldn't feel safe at all going to a Mexican island unless it's Cabo.
There you go. I'll take Cabo.
That would be pretty dope. Then I would have been pissed that I'm not going.
Listen. Of course, I would have preferred much to spend the next 3 weeks on some tropical isle that's only say like a 2-hour flight from here. That would be
I'd
nice.
say maybe 80 or 90 degrees.
Yeah.
Nice tropical breeze.
A lovely breeze.
But I feel like people got
dolphin
mad.
flying out the water.
I feel like
Flying.
people really got mad at the UFC or something that were just like, this is false advertising. It's ridiculous.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, okay, so obviously
Well,
getting,
the way that he sold it too, he's like,
was
we're going to buy an island. We're going to buy an island, and we're going to blah, blah, blah. Well, maybe, did he? I'm pretty sure
He
he
never
said.
said buy an
He
island.
didn't say buy?
No, well,
No.
Look, I guess I understand. I understand sort of both sides. First of all, I understand disappointment because, like you just said, that the marketing was very much I mean, even now, the Fight Island poster with an octagon on the beach, I'm like, fuck that. It doesn't look like that.
Yeah.
Let me tell you. So I can understand why people are slightly disappointed, but also it makes no difference to your viewing experience. They're going to be in an arena. You're not going to notice it at all. I think maybe the people who are disappointed were perhaps getting carried away with the whole sort of concept of it. And Dana even said to us at a post-fight press conference, I think people should probably.
Maybe that's it because he warned us like, hey, temper your expectations.
Well,
a little
but
bit.
he told us that very close to the announcement. He let the imaginations run wild for quite some time, and I think
is true.
I think that was intentional.
Yeah.
He knew that the imagination could run wilder than the. The realistic thing is like, what's Fire Island like? We were there in September. We've been to Fire Island. It's like, I can tell you what it's like. So I think I can understand that, and then I think because the UFC and the Abu Dhabi have that previous relationship, it feels like it's not as new as perhaps people were thinking about.
Right.
But again, as much as I joke about how I'm annoyed it's in Abu Dhabi, like realistically, we're still one of the only sports going. The ability to make something like this happen with international fights is what's important, not really the location.
I completely agree. I think that's what I'm fired up. We got a lot of good fights, man, and again, that week of 3 and 8 days is going to be a stretch, but man, it's going to be a lot of big fights, and we'll talk about them all once we get out there. Again, Oscar Willis will sit in plenty, I'm sure, since we won't have a lot of things to go do.
Get used to this.
That's why I thought it'd be fun to kind of get together. It's kind of like cold coffee passing the baton today. Just hand over the podcast to us.
Temporarily.
Let me hand the beer over. Not this one. This one's mine.
All right, well, listen. So we'll preview all those fights out there.
Are you guys going to get to go to the water park? I'm looking at this.
Don't know that the water park's open.
In September, I remember Casey and S from MMA Fighting. They showed up on fight day and said, "Oh, we went to the water park this morning." I went, well, that seems silly.
If you guys can't go, if you guys can go to the water park, somebody's got to ride one of those.
But
rides
they
for
said
me.
they got out the Uber, which I don't even know if we have Ubers. They got out the Uber. They were there, and they were there for like 3 minutes, and they went, "It's too hot. We have to go back."
Even at the water park?
Yeah, it's cool.
Wow.
It's an intense heat, dude. It's an intense heat.
I'm trying to see if we're no. I'm officially going to say no. It looks like this is the water park, and it's outside of the safety zone. Oh, Ferrari World's outside of that safety zone, too, I think. I was going to see because they've got, like, roller coasters and stuff.
This is where you guys are at?
Yeah.
Here? I think the dark green is the safety zone.
To the listeners, we're looking at a map of Yas Island. We're looking at specifically the safe zone. That's
well done, non-host of the show, to explain what's happening on the show. Thank you for coming to my rescue, for being incredibly unprofessional there.
There you go. But I can also say in the safe zone there is... nothing.
So I, as most people will probably do like me, I just pulled up a picture of the Yas Island. So I see like the Warner Brothers off to the right. I see the water park. Whereabouts is where you guys are going to be? If somebody
so we're
pulls
past that a little bit.
So Ferrari World is this big red spider thing that you can see. That's the big feature of Yas Island. That's not where we are. We are over to the west of it.
And basically the safe zone...
Southwest of it.
Yeah, the safe zone includes the hotels.
So do they construct the safe zone? So they're using existing hotels and stuff, but...
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah, correct. It's just we all have to stay within this environment. The golf course is part of the safe zone, so... I don't know, maybe get out and play around the golf over there.
As is a racetrack.
You should.
Yeah.
I don't know, man. Playing golf over... I'm very Caucasian. I will burn.
Yeah, you'll burn
so bad.
Get like a hat or something.
That'll do it. Yeah, you're right.
Or like a palm leaf thing or something.
Well, it would be appropriate if I...
A palm leaf. Just walk around with a palm
That's
leaf.
right.
Yeah.
I would. If you're drunk enough, no one's going to care.
If you're drunk enough walking around outside with a palm leaf on your head in Abu Dhabi,
You're
they
getting
fucking
arrested.
will. They will care.
You're getting arrested.
They fucking will care. Let me tell you.
All right, so listen, we'll be able to have time to talk about those fights. Like I said, we'll update you all the stretch on how things are going. I'll probably start posting some stuff on social media, I imagine, once we get on the plane tomorrow, and post a couple of things, what things look like. But I want to talk real quickly about MMA Junkies 2020 Mid-Year Awards. And when I say MMA Junkies, I will give all the credit to Mike Bond, because I'm not even sure if he asked any of us if we were okay with these picks, but he pulled these out, and that's why I wanted to talk about them and see if we're in line with it. So we're talking about the best moments or athletes or everybody involved in the first 6 months, which really, it's funny because normally it would be an incredibly daunting task to sit down and think about 6 months worth of fights. But when you consider how many fights we lost between Bellator, the regional stage, even UFC fights, I feel like I can remember this year's fights more than most of them. So we'll start out with the best male fighter. Best male fighter for the first 6 months of 2020. And he starts out with an honorable mention of Justin Gaethje, but the winner being Gilbert Burns.
So does he take best male fighter as sort of like breakout fighter, or the one that made the biggest splash? Like, what is the qualification for like best? When I see Gilbert Burns and then I see Justin, I think in my head like Gilbert made a huge splash, and it kind of reminds me a little bit about even the MMA awards had like the best MMA fighter or whatever, and both of these guys I think were in that running. I mean, Gilbert made a huge splash, but when you just use the generic sort of term best male fighter without sort of clarifying it.
Well, let's say it's fighter. I mean, let's say it's basically it's time to roll out your fighter. For whatever reason, the calendar year ended right now. They changed the calendar.
Let's be honest, most of us would be okay with.
Which one? Yeah, by the way, this is January 1st, 2021.
Yeah, stick up the Christmas tree, boys. We're done.
All right, so consider it's fighter. You know, we basically just cut this year in half. Basically, as a reaction to COVID-19, the government decided to redo the entire calendar so we could be done with 2020. And this is your fighter of the year.
Also not out of the realms of possibility.
Also not out of the realms of possibility. So basically what you're looking at, you get Justin Gaethje's win over Tony Ferguson, or you get Gilbert Burns' kind of stretch, I guess you would say, of getting him to us. Now, of course, we don't get to see what happens before we make this award. I mean, obviously, if he beats Kamaru Usman, I think Gilbert Burns is head and shoulders above Justin Gaethje at that point because now he's an undisputed UFC champion. But what you're factoring in with Gilbert Burns is the March win over Damian Maia and the May win over Tyron Woodley, both of which, by the way, Performance of the Night awards. So, Cold Coffee, with that in mind, do you like the pick of Gilbert Burns? Do you think Justin Gaethje gets it, or does another name come to mind?
I don't mind the Burns, honestly. I mean, I love Gaethje. I just what?
I don't mind the Burns.
Yeah, that was actually pretty funny.
All right, whatever. I'm like, did I say something? Like,
No, it wasn't anything silly.
No, I don't mind Gilbert Burns. I like when I think of the guys that have made huge splashes this year, it's hard to put anybody above what he's been able to do. One of the other names I was just thinking about, I was like, man, Josh Emmett's another guy that has made a huge name for himself this year, but his previous fight was 2019, so he's really only got the Burgos fight or Burgos or whatever Dana was calling him.
That was funny.
So I'm not opposed to that, and Gaethje, as much as he's really made some moves, I would think that Burns has made a bigger splash this year, I think, than Justin Gaethje. If I'm just looking at those two,
I'm going to respectfully disagree because of the context of those fights. So I think, without insulting them, I think a win over Damian Maia is not as impressive as it once was. And to be honest, and perhaps a bit more controversially, I don't know that a win over Tyron Woodley is as impressive as it once was.
Shut your mouth.
I mean, his performance against Gilbert was not dissimilar to his one against Usman, and I wonder where he's at in his career. I think a win over someone like Tony Ferguson is impressive whenever you do it. When you do that, if that guy's 70, that's impressive. And not just the... So, Gilbert, he finished Damian, that was very impressive. Against Woodley, he showed a really dominant performance. But for Gaethje, it wasn't just his win over Ferguson that I found impressive. It was that he continued on this journey of refining his own game, of becoming less sloppy, becoming more dialed in. And even halfway through that fight, we saw his coach saying, you're starting to get sloppy again. And he pulled it back. And that's very hard for a fighter to do. So for me, Gaethje was the most impressive.
I gotta say, yeah, to me it is almost like splitting hairs, right? And you're arguing at two different things. Because Gilbert, at the beginning of this year, I mean, yes, he was coming on a little bit, but he certainly wasn't in the position he has. So for somebody that's made the most of their opportunity, come from nowhere. Now, again, if we were doing this 2 weeks from now and he's beaten Kamaru Usman and he's a UFC welterweight champion, obviously there's no argument whatsoever. But I kind of lean towards what you're saying, Oscar, that those wins are good. But let's say Gilbert Burns had picked up wins over Colby Covington and Jorge Masvidal. You know what I mean? Like
then
top two. Yeah. You don't have a title fight yet, but you're right. I mean, you're beating the best of the best. And I'm not trying to take a shot at Woodley or Maia, but you're right. I don't think it necessarily means what it once did. So, on the one hand, I'm supportive of the idea of Gilbert Burns because this is a guy that has come from, I mean, we knew who he was, but relative obscurity to most people, to now he's in this huge main event. Big fight. He's capitalized on it. And he's been able to fight twice, which not many people. I mean, we're starting to see twice now, but he just timed it just right. Like, he was right before the pandemic and right after, or at least, well, not after the pandemic, but after the cancellations. So I do. But I think, honestly, the right call here probably should have been Justin Gaethje because of the quality of the win.
Well, I think that's the qualifying factor is, when you're putting in like, all right, who's the best fighter that beat the best people this year? Then you want to say like this. But Justin's been at the top of the game. He's been at the top of people's forethought as for who is one of the greatest fighters. So he's been where he's at.
That's true.
And my thing with Burns is the fact that nobody even thought about Burns before this year.
That's true.
So while he didn't get, of course, the same quality victories, nobody was thinking about Gilbert Burns outside of people that just knew that he was a badass.
Well, look, I mean, he just took a title shot from Jorge Masvidal.
Right,
and that's say what you want about extracurricular negotiations. He got it.
Right. So I think it's just however you want to put it. So where in my mind I was thinking, all right, who made the most? I keep going with the breakout fighter of the year, sort of thing. But for a guy that maybe has proven to be literally the best fighter of the year, then I would definitely agree with you and say Gaethje is a better fighter than what Burns has done. But Burns wasn't even issue before this year. Nobody would dare to put him in like
what an
the
amazing
top.
year it would be
Yeah,
if you were able
he's
to
had
beat
what a
Usman and then maybe
crazy-
even sneak in a title defense
Well,
at the end of the year.
I was about
Right.
to say, mate, I mean,
Unreal.
in about 12 days, this question could be redundant. You know, if he
Yeah.
beats Usman, he's fighter of the year, let alone 6 months.
Yeah.
You know,
Breakout fighter of the year, fighter of the year.
yeah, for
Yeah.
sure.
It'd be amazing. You know what's? I'll tell you what's interesting too about the Gaethje.
And it couldn't happen to
performance.
a nicer guy. Like
Oh,
I
Gilbert's
like
the
Usman
best.
a lot, but like Burns is literally probably one of the nicest dudes you will ever meet, and he's so excited, and he's still happy about doing interviews. He's happy about talking about stuff. So it's very refreshing as us as media people to have to go and do what we need to do job wise, but to find somebody that's excited to be interviewed, it's kind of cool.
It is good.
It's
Especially when
kinda-
they get to that level as well.
at that level, yeah, he could literally be doing what he's doing and be like, no, guys, I ain't feeling this, and that's kind of par for the
Dude,
course.
I'll
but
tell you what, man. We'll get into the preview, I guess, later once we get to Fight Island. But dude, he's dangerous, man. Anybody that's
He's
writing
so
him out, like
good.
I'm not
Dude.
taking away from. Look, I have all the respect in the world for Kamaru Usman. Actually, we called a couple of fights together for Titan FC, so I got to know him a little bit personally as well. But just from his professional game, I mean, he's a phenomenal fighter, and I favor Usman in this fight. But man, if anybody's writing off Burns, as you said, kind of stole the title shot away from Masvidal.
Yep.
But if anybody's thinking, this guy doesn't deserve a shot, bro, with the submission game that he has and what he's going to be able to offer, even if he's on his back, plus the power that he packs into his hands.
Plus the fact they've
ridiculous.
trained together for years.
So true.
his submission
good.
is sick. I mean, like I thought it was awesome when we saw the quintet. You know, when it got to the team thing, he was the anchor.
Yeah, man.
He was. You put your ringer at the end. The
Right.
fact that they decided, like, when it comes to submission, who are we going to put to
That's
carry
our guy.
the team? They put him there, and the fact that now he's striking at a whole nother level, he's scary as all get out
He's
now.
scary.
He's fighting on another level.
I'll tell you the other thing, too, that I find really interesting about Gaethje as well is I feel like the story of Khabib Nurmagomedov before Gaethje's win over Tony Ferguson was like, this dude's pretty much unbeatable, man. Like, nobody's going to stop him. And Gaethje looks so damn good against Tony Ferguson. I think people are like, that guy's going to beat Khabib Nurmagomedov.
Yeah, well, I mean, that's a consistent thread through MMA history, right? Yeah, be it the way just humanity works, like very recency bias, you know. As soon as you see something impressive, you're like, oh my god.
It's true. Recency bias is a big thing, right? Like, it's undeniable in this sport.
But I mean, for fair reason, like Justin Gaethje versus Khabib, obviously that's going to be a mammoth fight, you know, at the end of the year, and it could be interesting. But as for Gilbert Burns, I think anyone denying his skill, I don't think anyone's denying his skill. I think anyone who's sort of like mildly unimpressed with Gilbert is perhaps just thinking of Masvidal being out there, and that was the bigger money fight and bigger exciting star fight,
Right.
you know. And I understand that. I really would, if we were flying over to Fight Island to watch Masvidal versus Usman, I can't deny I'd be buzzing right now. I'd be so excited. So
Just a different level of
Sorry,
star power
Yeah,
and you know.
it's just the way it is. Like that's just the way the sport is. Whatever.
Yeah.
But yeah.
All right, let's go. Let's shift over to the ladies. Best female fighter of the half year so far. We'll start with the honorable mention, and he goes with Valentina Shevchenko, the winner being Zhang Weili. Certainly, I mean, nobody in the women's division has fought, multiple times with multiple big wins to get the kind of look that Gilbert Burns did in the men's division. So I think you're looking pretty much at just the champions or who's performing at the highest level. Really, the only, so what you're looking at is Valentina Shevchenko picking up a third-round TKO win over Caitlin Chikagian, Zhang Weili picking up the hard-fought split decision over Yana Jacek at UFC 248. Of course, anytime you're talking about women's fighter of the year, you're going to talk about Amanda Nunes, the champ as well. She had a dominant victory over Felicia Spencer. I think it would really be just among those three that you'd be talking about right now because nobody has kind of emerged from the shadows, so to speak. But what do you think? Do you like the pick of Zhang Weili as the women's fighter of the half year, or does Valentina Shevchenko and her history deserve it? Or, as we said, does Amanda Nunes and her history, does it deserve it? Cold Coffee, what do you think?
I mean, if you had taken and added December in there and the win with Jermaine Durand as there as well, so she has 2 title defenses in 2 different weight classes. It's just a non-discussion in my eyes. But unfortunately, if we have to stick it to just that one fight of the year, I thought the fight was good with Felicia. So then I would probably start leaning into other ones. I don't mind the Wiley decision just because I'm just so high on her story right now. I think what she's been able to sort of do and bring light to fighters from other areas in the world, I don't mind it. I don't mind it at all. But Nunes. I mean, it's hard to not pick Nunes for anything that she's involved, but
Yeah, I mean, I think if like you
just
said,
'cause she's
had that December
stud.
fight been in January,
It's not even a
even
decision.
Even if you're not
in discussion.
even if you're not thrilled the fact that she didn't get the finishes, just the fact
Yeah.
that you're defending, not only that you're defending twice, you've got 2 versus the 1 for the others, but you're talking about defending both belts. And that
And
I think
it's the
that
first
would
time
push
that's
it
been
over.
done as well.
Yeah,
I mean,
I think
so-
that would push it over the line. But you're right. So it's not. So even though it sounds weird to not include Amanda Nunes in any kind of, as you said, in any women's discussion, she should be there.
Yeah.
Greatest of all time, greatest is. The win over Felicia Spencer, and I think she even said she kind of took it like she wanted to go 5 rounds, and she kind of paced herself. And I don't know. I get it. I understand it. But at the same time, I think we want those big finishes from her, right? We want the vicious finishes. So then to me, I am okay with it boiling down to Shevchenko and Wiley. Shevchenko, of course, got the finish, dominated Caitlin Chukagian, who was a rightful number 1 contender. It's not like she didn't deserve to be in there. She had earned her way to the spot, dominated it, got the finish, incredibly one-sided. Meanwhile, Zhang was able to battle her way to, I mean, tipping my hand for later, but a fight of the year for me.
Yeah.
With that victory. So what do you think, Oscar, is Valentina's dominant win over, maybe kind of an unheralded contender, but a legitimate contender? I mean, Shevchenko proved that she's on another level. Meanwhile, Wiley didn't prove she's on another level, but she beat a battle-tested former champion in an instant classic.
Yeah. For me, this actually isn't a hard one. I think Chukagian deserved to be in that spot. There's no comparison to Valentina's win over her than there is to be honest, you could be even in a lower, like on the lower ranks of the fighter roster, but if you went through 5 rounds like that, I think you should still get in a shout of fighter of the year.
Yeah.
That is what we saw is physical exertion to a human limit. Those two. I mean, look at Joanna's face. Like and the crazy thing is, you can see the damage in Joanna, and you still can't really say she didn't win the fight. That was such a split. It was so even. And I think if you look at before that, going into that fight, okay, so she beat Jessica Andrade. I really think that was the first massive test of Zhang Weili's career.
She got a little bit fast tracked because she had the impressive record, and there was an event in China.
There's the marketing. There's a marketing background.
It made sense,
everyone
man.
knows that.
But she got tested and she passed it.
Yeah, and she got tested. So for me, Valentina cruising her way through a contender that was sort of, I don't want to disrespect you, but someone who basically just got it because they were there. They were the logical next step.
Right.
That's very different to what Wiley pulled off in that fight. So for me, it's a bit of an easy call. There is an argument, like you had said, about Valentina being levels above. And had Chukagian been fighting up to that fight like she did in her last performance, where she really showed against Shevchenko's sister, like she could be dominant, she could be aggressive, and then afterwards she said, the reason I didn't fight like that was because I didn't want to lose my title shot. If she'd been fighting like that up to that fight and Valentina had beat that Chukagian,
Yep.
okay. But
That's a good point.
to be honest, up to the title fight, I thought Chukagian had been very sort of docile, and I would struggle to find someone who thought she was going to beat Valentina.
No disrespect, but you're right. I think everybody thought that she was just on a different level.
Yeah, and so for me, I think it's an easy call.
I think so. I think that's the right call as well.
To be honest, I'll even go one further. I would put Joanna above Valentina or Amanda in this
If
call.
you were looking for like the silver medalist.
If I was looking for silver medalist, Joanna would beat Valentina or Amanda this year.
You know what, man? That's an interesting point. I hadn't even thought about that, but you're right. I mean, she basically ended up on the other side of the razor of that, razor-thin split decision. She was the other one. Not a bad point. We don't give out silver medals, but I would probably say the same thing.
Why not?
All right.
Silver medal it is.
Fight of the year.
Congratulations.
I already tipped my hand on this one, but fight of the year, MMA Junkies Mike Bond went with an honorable mention of the one we just saw, Dustin Poirier versus Dan Hooker. Obviously a fantastic lightweight fight, with the winner being Zhang Weili versus Joanna Jędrzejczyk at UFC 248. Since I have tipped my hand, I'll just throw my opinion out first. I do believe this is the right call. Now, there's been some other ones as well. I heard that Emmett and Burgos was obviously a fantastic fight. I've heard some people shouting out Gaethje and Ferguson as well. But
Romero Adesanya.
Romero Adesanya has to be at the top of your list. Jesus. It's funny. I always harken back to this the way our whole world has changed in the past 3 months. 3 months. Can you believe that?
Seriously.
3 months. And I always laugh. I was like, I remember a simpler time when our biggest complaint was that Adesanya Romero sucked.
I interviewed Adesanya the night before his fight, and he coughed and went, "Don't worry, it's not Corona." And we went, "Ah!" and laughed. It's like, fucking hell, how different does that feel like that?
Jeez, that's crazy. All right, so look, there have been some great fights, and listen, there's discussion we had. I know UFC President Dana White doesn't want to have the discussions, but I think there are some discussions we had about how has that small cage been helping things a little bit. I do think that's been forcing some more action in these fights. I do wonder too about our maybe part of the feel. Maybe the reason I'm so tied to that fight with Zhang and Joanna is the fact that we did have a crowd in there, and so we did have that like, oh my God, you could feel the buzz, and people are looking around like, oh wow, whereas big fights in the pandemic area, it's just me and you looking at each other going like, impressive, huh? You know what I mean? Versus like other people going crazy. So I do wonder if maybe that is impacting my opinion on this. But the reason ultimately I lean towards it, number one, it was just a phenomenal fight. To me, I've said it's one of the best fights of all time. If you call it the best women's title fight of all time, I think you're limiting too much. It deserves
you're doing
among
it
the
disservice
greatest
at
fight.
that point.
Absolutely. Championship implications. A reigning champion, a former champion, a dominant former champion. So not just somebody that was one and done as a title holder. A legit champ. Their styles obviously just matched up for an incredible fight.
There's a bit of beef heading into it.
Little bit of that going in with some of the jabs that were thrown out there. 5-round pace. No disrespect to Poirier and Hooker, because I feel like you're almost just giving them a disservice if you say, well, it's slowed down in round 5. We're like, holy shit, you can't do what you did in round 4. So I feel bad almost saying it tailed off. But to me, the fact that the women's fight went all 25 minutes, it was a title fight, not just a main event. Their positions in the sport, in that division, those are two of the greatest ever in that division. And again, I will say maybe the fact that it happened in front of a crowd, so that heightened my the atmosphere for it. Maybe that did it too. I don't know. I feel like I don't really notice the crowd that much when I'm watching a fight, but maybe it did. Oscar, what do you think?
For me, actually, it's a funny one, because when I've had a few drinks on a Friday night, I'll go back and watch some fights, and
Every Friday night,
and Saturday and Sunday. But I rewatched Hooker and Poirier, and I also rewatched Zhang and Joanna, and I have to say the crowd thing didn't come into it for me, because on a personal level, by the end of the fight with Zhang and Joanna, I was still. It was almost like my mind couldn't comprehend that they were both still going at the pace they were going, especially with Joanna's the visible injuries and stuff like that. And like you said, to say that, they slowed down in the 5th is to act as if they're not human. Of course they did. But I do think that makes a difference. And I also think, I've always maintained this, the reason why fights are important and why some fights are important and some are not are stakes, right?
Right.
There's a reason why we tune into a championship fight over two guys who are lower level, is because of the stakes. And I think when a title's involved and you have a fight that amazing for a title, it's hard to deny it. I personally, like we're talking about, it's the best women. So I actually believe that Zhang and Joanna could have an argument to be better than Jones Gustafsson. It really was.
Yep.
Because it just was.
Yep, it was.
Was it?
I think so.
Is that a fact?
It is now.
Cold coffee has made it fact. Well, but to your point,
to me, that's just as recency bias aside, and I do think that Poirier had the Poirier was visibly rocked. There was more visible, you can hear the punches, they're heavier, but I think on a technical level and just fucking savagery, hard to deny.
When you're in the 5th round of that fight, in the 5th round of Hooker Poirier, at that point Hooker's just trying to hang on, right? Like who's winning the fight. In that one, they're still going at it back and forth to the very, a minute 30 out, a minute out. It's to the end. So I think. Yeah, the fact that it was still that competitive, and as you said, with the stakes.
And also, if you could direct a fight, right? If you could direct a fight to make it the most exciting, what would you do? Well, I'd have this round for this guy, this round for that guy, back and forth. Like Adesanya Gastelum is probably, in my opinion, one of the best ever for back and forth.
Amazing fight.
Joanna versus Wiley went back and forth in rounds.
Yes.
It didn't go one round for her, one round for her. It was like the first 3 minutes were hers, and then it went back, and it really was just as. I've never seen a fight at that level being so equal.
Yeah.
I don't think I've ever seen one that's just like you flip a coin.
And,
you know.
One of the best fights ever.
I said,
regardless of gender, that one of the best fights easily.
I've heard people chime in, Emmett Burgos, which was a fantastic fight, 3 rounds versus 5, stakes as you mentioned.
But also, was it because it wasn't like Burgos was getting him? It was mostly by the end. I felt like Josh was piling it on.
I thought so too. It was crazy. It's funny because I actually got to watch that one from inside the Apex instead of the media tent. And so we don't have the benefit of being able to I can hear a little bit of the commentary. Basically, I can just hear Bisping and Cormier, depending on who's there. You can't hear John Eddick. He tries to keep his voice down a little bit. But it was weird without commentary to see the ginger steps that he was taking, man. To see like how early on Josh Emmett was hurt. I'm like, this dude can't move right now, man.
Even on TV, when he reached down to like touch his leg, which is obviously a terrible tell, I was like, that's the fight over. And then he seemed to just get over it. I guess it was just a twinge, and then his whole knee shredded.
So crazy because I couldn't hear the corner exchanges, I couldn't hear the commentary or like anything they were getting from the truck. But I just remember watching that, going, dude, is his leg gone right now? Yeah. Like what? Amazing. But I guess for people, some people saying Gaethje Ferguson. I don't know, man. I thought that was a great fight, but I don't know. Maybe I think for
it didn't have the ups and downs.
That's it. You need like the ebbs and flows, right? That's why I always say when you're talking about all-time greats, and you mentioned Jones, Gustafsson. I mean, you're talking about those ebbs and flows and the back and forth. Like even Poirier Hooker was like one big momentum shift.
I think you could argue that maybe it's one of the greatest performances in Gaethje. I mean, he got dropped in second, and he was just so good. I mean, by the end of it, it was a beating.
Yeah,
but you couldn't argue it was one of the greatest fights.
That fight
was a fun watch for sure.
I remember.
Right.
I remember. I think it was before round 5, right? Where like Whitman is just like, like how are you feeling? He's like, this is fun.
Yeah,
this is fun.
Yeah. Well, because he got dropped to the end of the second, right? He got dropped to the end of the second, and then Tony was like, get up, Justin. Oh. And I think possibly. Sorry, we're getting carried away here, but there's possibly first fight back. It felt like the first,
absolutely, it had to factor in. I remember that night when Sam Alvey was the first fighter to walk in. I got
emotional.
Yeah,
it's
kind of
ridiculous.
Crazy.
But
I do remember too. Didn't Whitman say like this is the final round? He was like, really? Like
But I mean, by that point, like we said, it's not. That wasn't. It was a beating at that point, And Tony, I think actually Tony's superhumanness made it more uncomfortable to watch as opposed to more enjoyable to watch. When he's like when someone gets hit and they shake their head like a dog or something, it's like, oh god,
Yeah, man.
Get him out of there.
That's so true, dude. That was a weird reaction. You were like, oh, this is not good.
That's not great. So
all right, submission of the half year so far. Honorable mention goes to Diego Fajeda over Anthony Pettis at UFC 246. The win goes to Aljamain Sterling versus Corey Sandhagen at UFC 250. I weighed in first on this one or on the last one, so I'll let you start, Oscar. What do you think? I mean, I don't think anything is stuck out. I mean, there was there was the twister. So I mean, as far as the
you just took my thunder.
Oh, sorry, I just did a gorgeous.
Thanks, Goes.
I just did a gorgeous George. That's what Gorgeous George does.
That's the only thing.
Let's go to you first.
I was just gonna say, when I think of submissions, I want to think of ones that just somehow leave a lasting image in my mind. And I remember watching the twister and just thinking like, I cannot believe he's pulled that off. Didn't he almost pull it off a second time?
Oh, he tried it. He tried to set it up multiple times.
No, I mean in a different event, like a second event. I thought he almost got it or whatever. Yeah. But that one stuck out in my mind. So I don't know. But yeah, I think he just fucking ruined it.
Sorry, dog.
Twister.
Well, I guess so that's what I was gonna say is because normally I'm the same way as you. Like if you see something that's rare or that it's something that you don't see a whole lot of or whatever, then that one stands out.
In the awards, there was the Goga Plata that somebody did.
Yeah,
like,
somebody hits the Goga Plata, you go to that right away.
Yeah, so, you're like, okay, that's like when DJ hit the flying triangle or whatever. Everybody was like, okay,
ridiculous.
Or the flying armbar, whatever it was.
Yeah.
Like people are like, okay, that's the one.
Yeah.
So for me, the twister was, and just because I think I love Bryce, man, he's a
character.
He
man.
is a character.
Been such a fan. I was a fan of his from World Series. You can go back and see my tweets back then. I was like, this dude's the real deal.
Yeah.
He had that famous interview with Jamie Varner. He's like, why do they call you Thug Nasty? And he's like, if you haven't seen this, it's great. Jamie Varner asked why they call him. I said Jamie Varner. I always used to do that. Joey Varner. Sorry. I apologize, Joey. There was, as you well know, there was a fighter by a similar name. But Joey Varner went in there and asked him, and why do they call you Thug Nasty? He's like, you see me in the cage, but you ain't see me in the street. And I was just like, this guy is the best. So yeah, that to me would be the dark horse.
Can you imagine
candidate.
if you could get Thug Nasty Jason Knight?
Oh my God. Hick Diaz versus Thug Nasty.
I was going to say the crowd would be incredible.
How about like a main event in Little Rock or a main event
Biloxi,
in New Orleans?
Mississippi.
Oh
Yeah,
my God,
see
that would
Biloxi.
be amazing. I have never needed a fight so much in my life than I do that one right now. I did not know I needed that fight, but I need it.
Jeez, you want camo shorts? The whole crowd's in camo.
All right, so that's the dark horse candidates. That's one that maybe should have been there. And that's a good. And the more I think about it, you're right, man. Especially with him being the character, and so that one that may have should have been on the list. What do you think, Oscar? I mean, Diego Ferreira, obviously that was kind of a statement submission over Anthony Pettis. But Aljo's, man, you talk about a beating man. I mean, I think we all going into that fight thought it was going to be razor thin, neck and neck, back and forth. Who's going to win this fight? And Aljo just went out there, and my God, like that was peak Aljo. Just swarmed him.
Yeah.
No
like
room
he had
to
a grudge
breathe.
on his shoulder.
Yeah,
like
man.
He
Like, I'm
had
getting this
somewhere
done.
to beat.
Well, yeah, for me, I'm going to pick Aljo because again, like the last answer, it's the stakes, right? You know, it's Aljo versus Sandhagen. It was this could be a contender fight. It could be ruining a contender, you know, stuff like that. And Aljo came in and absolutely steamrolled him. And I think Aljo has it for me, and I know, John, we've spoken about this in private. For me, I feel like Aljo should be a bigger deal than he is to most people.
Agree.
I think he's incredibly talented, and I just feel like he never really, for whatever reason, it doesn't seem to click with people. But yeah, for that performance, I was like, well, the guy's undeniable now. You know, I personally felt that while I'm excited to see the fight, Jose shouldn't have got the title shot. I think Yan versus Aljo was always the fight to make, and it was always there. Even when Cejudo was picking out legends, I always thought those two should fight. And I think Aljo is just continuously underrated. So I'm going to pick him for this submission of the 6 months because I think the stakes were there and his performance smashed through them.
I agree. And you're right, man. No disrespect to Aldo. Aldo is a legend. And I'll tell you what's been interesting.
Aldo could win that fight, dude.
He could. And I'll tell you what's been really interesting is, you know, guys like Sandhagen, guys like even Aljamain and other bantamweights in the division. It's been interesting to hear them, like, really not be that mad because they have such respect for Aldo. They're like, guys, he's Aldo. Like, it's cool. You get the shot. But I agree with you. I mean,
will they be that cool when he starts to do the same shtick that Cejudo did and only pick legends to fight?
Absolutely not.
Right.
That respect goes out the window real quick.
When Cejudo comes flying back out of retirement to fight him.
It's just like we were talking earlier. Like, Aldo.
How garbage would that be?
Oh, it'd be terrible.
How garbage will that be?
Laying it out now. Yeah.
Should he win it?
Aldo Cejudo in Brazil, I understood. Again, going back to the same reason as like why did Zhang Weili get her opportunity in China? Well, you get it. So Aldo Cejudo in Brazil, I didn't love it, but I got it. Aldo and Yan on Fight Island.
I enjoyed the fact that the reason why Aldo is fighting for the title is because Cejudo called him out and Cejudo wanted it, and then Cejudo retired. I was like, so why is he still fighting for the title, bro?
It's like, well, I can't take you back from my man like that. I already offered him a title shot,
Yeah.
but yeah, you can.
Yeah,
you can.
You do it all. You do it all the time.
But you know what? Since we're talking, I agree. I think this is the submission of the half year, and if I was going to say, you know, offer up a silver medal, I would say the Twister. And no disrespect, dude, I'm a huge Diego Ferreira fan. That's a dude that's flown under the radar and doesn't get the respect that he deserves. But the rareness of the Twister, I think that probably should have been.
I mean, that was the first time that Pettis got submitted, if I'm
right.
not wrong. So I mean, that is huge in its own right, and that's probably why it got bumped up there. But yeah, I mean, I love the fact that the Twister, it's even got a great name.
Too funny.
So,
all right, last one. Best knockout. And we've got some candidates here for sure. Honorable mention went to Francis Ngannou over Jairzinho Rozenstruik, but the winner was Cody Garbrandt versus Rafael Assunção at UFC 250. Obviously, we've had some big knockouts. Hell, UFC 250 had some big knockouts as well. Sean, by the way, I got to say, man, how great was that Sean O'Malley video where he was breaking down like why his knockout was better?
That's when I started to realize, I was like, oh, this guy's got a dry sense of humor,
Super
like genius
clever,
guy,
man. And I can't remember who it was on our staff that was like, I have respect for this level of petty. You know what I mean? It's so good, man. Like it was such a good breakdown. But so you could throw Sean O'Malley in there maybe as well. But what do you guys think? That Cody Garbrandt one was pretty damn special.
Well, there's this Irish man in January. No, I'm joking.
You can throw that one in there. The hip knockout.
The shoulder hip knockout.
When you're knocking out a man with just a hip and a shoulder, maybe you do need to be on the list.
No, I have to say it's right now at this point in the year, it's pretty hard to argue against Cody because I don't know. Well, first of all, that was the same night as O'Malley's knockout, which was also stupid. It was incredible. But if I'm talking about my personal reaction, what made me nearly flip the table over in front of me was Cody, because it was just like something out of a film, leaning over to one side. And for as much love as I have for technical fights, I also love a bit of like playground violence. So I remember when Holly Holm head kicked Betch Correia, and then she sort of just ran up and smacked her with the right hand. I was like, that's like something out of the schoolyard.
When Betch tried to call timeout.
Yeah, and she was like, yeah.
That's right.
And the way Cody just he threw it like a baseball pitcher and just whoop, it was unbelievable.
It was. All right. So playing into that, I mean, does Ngannou's deserve more recognition because it was just? I mean, because that to me is honestly. And I would never say this to Francis's face, but that was. I mean, to me, that's what takes away from a little bit. Like the power of his knockout was insane. The quickness of his knockout was insane. The juxtaposition of the silent arena
was crazy.
Was weird.
Well, he looked like he was dead.
Yeah, you're like, I just killed a man in silence. You know what I mean? So that was weird. But I mean, when you go back and watch the sequence, as scary as it is, and I don't think any human being alive wants to stand in front of Francis Ngannou when he's swinging like that, it's not the technical beauty,
well,
right?
He did get tagged about 8 times on the way in.
Right.
It wasn't the Overeem knockout, for example. The Overeem knockout was absolutely amazing. With the Jairzinho knockout, it was like he had somewhere else to go. It was like he's like, let's get this done. Get to the bank. And it was just like he just swarmed him, and it was a bit sloppy. And while it was impressive, I think it was one of those things when you watch it in real time, you're like, oh my god. And then when you watch the replay, and the more you see it, the less impressive it gets.
That could have gone the other way.
Yeah, and the more you watch it, the more you're like, actually.
It was funny, I flew to Florida on the same flight with Francis and his team, and so he was actually sitting right behind me. So we ended up on layover together in Dallas, and obviously Eric Nixick, Dewey Cooper, guys that we know really well from Vegas. So we were all talking for quite a while. And Francis had shared a lot of really cool things about his story that I didn't even know about him. But they were talking about the dedication they had done for like 15 weeks and how hard they had been working. And after the fight, like I reached out to Eric and I was like, so is that the game plan? 15 weeks for that? He was
15 seconds.
Yeah. He's like, no, that wasn't exactly the game plan. So to me. Yeah, the sheer ferocity of Francis Ngannou deserves, but as you said, like the Overeem knockout, like that's like, oh my god, he almost decapitated. To me, I like the Garbrandt one. I like the Garbrandt one over the O'Malley one, even though I like O'Malley's video better, and it was super technical and he's so good. But yeah, you're right. I mean that the angle at which he launched that, and to see Garbrandt, and maybe too, you talk about stakes. This wasn't a title fight,
I was thinking
but
about that,
some personal stakes as well, right? Like a guy's like career is kind of on the line. Like, does this guy still have it? And he comes out and he's fighting smart, but then he starts to get that swagger. He starts to dance.
He does.
He starts to do that little dance, and that we all love, and then hits him with that, and right at the bell, that makes it special.
Yeah, that's true.
The fact that he knew it was one hit or quitter, you always like that when they're just like
the walk off. Yeah, you love a walk off.
The walk off. It's got to be me. Cole Coffey, you chilling with the Ohio boy. I imagine you gotta stick with your fellow Buckeye. Are you
it's
a
always
Buckeye if
Buckeyes.
you're just from Ohio, or do you have to be Ohio State?
You have to be you have to still be. I mean, I think
the Buckeye
we
State,
technically
right?
try to claim everybody, but there's some people that just completely go the opposite route. Like I had some best friends that it hurts me to call them best friends that decided to choose that team up north as their teams, but I think it's just
so Ohio State.
They just revolted. And who our opponent was?
There are 2 Ohio teams.
There's Ohio University and then there's Ohio State. I mean, there's tons of colleges, but there's like the Ohio State and then there's Ohio University.
He won't say it because their bitter rival is Michigan.
Okay.
They won't even say Michigan.
We don't even like to say their name, but I will say their name if I have to.
He says after not saying it once.
I'm gotten very good in my older age of politely skipping saying their name. I think you said it with when you were talking about Cody. Just I think that the sense of immediacy that it came at the end of the buzzer, it was so dramatic. It was just so out of left field that we almost just like, okay, the round's over. you had all these emotions like, oh, we're gonna see another cool round of action.
So true.
And then to
He's
see
like,
it
nope.
just get immediately ended, it was just so jaw dropping.
Also, perhaps because he had his back to the cage, right? Where Sean was in the middle of the cage. I think there's something about Cody having his back to the cage and then being like, nah, it's cool. And
Yeah,
then
it's funny because DC kept trying to say, "Look, his eyes don't go." I'm like, I don't see it quite like that. It looked like he was just like ducking down, like, "Hey, I got one more throw me. Let's do this." You know. Whereas like Francis, I assume every time I see Francis, I'm going to see a debilitating, heart-stopping knockout. If I don't, then I'm like, okay, well that sucked,
Right.
You know. So it wasn't as shocking to me when I saw,
Surprise
even though
factor.
it was
the surprise.
It was the
factor.
surprise factor. If it comes down to the wow factor, like when you still see it, you're still just like, oh my god, this person is the scariest man alive, and he's completely devastating. But when the whole Cody was just so surprising to me that when I thought about it at the end of the night, that's the fight that stuck out in my head. As for like the whole evening, it just that finish. So it's hard to as for the few knockouts that we're sort of talking about, it's hard to put anything else above it. And then when you put the fact that the Ohio State is still in there, that's like putting gravy on mashed potatoes. That's like putting salt and pepper on the buttered corn. You know.
I guess not to steal a line from Dana, but you know, there's the holy shit moments when you watch a fight, and out of O'Malley, Ngannou, and Garbrandt, Cody's is the one that made me say holy shit.
That's the holy
right.
shit. I mean, like
O'Malley's was
wow.
dope.
Yeah.
O'Malley's was a
and
dope
was
finish.
Yeah.
That
Cody's
was
a holy shit.
Yeah. I think everybody
point.
that saw
That's
that
the
kind
scale
of
now. That's the scale now. You got your O's, your Y's,
your heart skips a little bit. I mean, I think we probably all like sort of held our breath for a moment without even thinking about it because it was so shocking when it happened.
Yeah.
It was so amazing that
I think I just screamed.
I think everybody in the media room sort of screamed a little bit, and most times we don't ever make noises back in the back. You'll hear it like comments a little bit
when it elicits a roar from the media tent, because in the media tent, you know you're not being watched by anybody, so you can be a little bit more loose, but we're still all media professionals at the end of the day, so you're not trying to be like a fanboy.
Yeah, you're not biased. You're just screaming at action.
Yeah, you're just enjoying a good fight. So when you see something like that, you're like, holy cow, that is literally one of the most unique things I'm going to see.
And that's my excuse for running around the room when Nunes knocked out Cyborg. I was screaming my fucking head
That
off.
was, yeah.
And Masvidal, Askren, I lost my shit then as well.
That's crazy.
Clearly, if those were in the running, those would be the winners.
Yeah.
But
that's just this.
But we'll take this one.
All right, overall it's good. We'll give the young Mike Bond a pass on it. He did pretty well here. I think maybe he messed up on the male fighter of the year, but other than that, I think we're all pretty good with the selections. Maybe a couple second place finishes could have been in there, but I think he represented us pretty well in the half year discussions.
He didn't do so bad.
I like it. All right, well listen.
I mean, I wouldn't say he's like journalist of the year.
Supporting your boy. I appreciate that.
Dude,
Log on to World MMA Awards. Vote for John Morgan. Vote for MMA Junkie.
If there's a way to take a vote away from a candidate, find that out. No, I'm just kidding.
If you can give a silver medal, give it to the Mac Life. They deserve the silver medal.
Yeah, we do.
Oh,
Fuck
yeah.
ESPN. No, I like ESPN too.
We would all appreciate it. Vote how you see fit.
Yeah.
But
Yes.
we would definitely appreciate you.
They're all good candidates. I mean, there's definitely some good people in there. I mean, it's fun. We were lucky enough, and you know, it's the kind of thing that, you know, when you think about this at the end of the year, and obviously, you know, I've always been not the biggest fan of this popularity contest, but I do appreciate the fact that anytime you could look at your peers and sort of give credit to your peers, it's kind of cool to see. So it's cool to see the Mac Life getting some recognition.
That's cool.
It's cool to see. I mean, even some of the names. I don't know where the fuck Gareth came out of nowhere on this one. And
I saw that.
Oh man.
and I like Gareth, but I just think like there's so many other options, and that's the kind of thing that you've seen some people that been getting a little bit pissy about the choice and whatever. But like I've said every year,
you have to remember,
just can't take it personal.
You have to remember, no one gives a fuck. Like the fans don't give a fuck about the journalists.
Oh,
and
this
the
is
media.
definitely
so
the most
ridiculous.
important award.
This is just our ego.
Yeah.
Like, this is just for the media's ego.
You know, one less time of Casey coming in the room saying, "The award winner's here." I'm like, oh.
Yeah.
But I love those cats. I mean, if people take pleasure out of this thing, I'm happy for you if you get your award.
I think the rivalry between the media outlets has declined heavily for the last couple of years.
Well, you've had people moving around, so I mean, now you have people that have worked at multiple of them. I think that's part of it. I think the other thing too is, I mean, maybe just the industry's growth as a whole. In the beginning, I think we all felt like we were battling for a little bit of position because there wasn't much real estate to be had. So everybody was very, very territorial. And now I think, I mean, you see it. I mean, I do think it's really awesome when we do things like, shit, man, my battery on my computer, my camera just died. It's like, bro, you know what's funny? I use that same model. Here's a battery. You know what I mean? Or dude, I don't know what happened, man, but my audio file corrupted. It's like, bro, I'll give you the audio file. Where it's where it's like, hey, man, yes, we're all in competition. Of course, we all want to win awards. We all want to be the first one to get the video up. We all want to be the one that gets the most hits. But at the same time, we realize, hey, we all work around these people. We all work together. And it's like if something malfunctioned with their equipment or if they forgot something or made a mistake, now I draw the line at like, hey, you didn't show up tonight. Can you send me all the audio from tonight? No, I absolutely cannot. But if you're
working, need a giant dick on that one.
Yeah, but if you're working side by side with me and your gear malfunctions or there's some technical error, even if it was human error, even if you're just like, dude, I don't know, I double tapped my recorder and that's not working.
That might have even happened this last event.
To you.
It might have happened. No, I didn't mess up.
Oh, okay.
But I mean, I might have known of somebody else that had an audio issue on one of the people.
Can you imagine if you screwed up the audio issue?
But you're right.
Well, that's just one World MMA Award nominated outlet helping another World MMA Award nominated outlet. That's what we do.
I mean, and it's funny because while these are our competitors, these are some these outlets and some of these people are some of my favorite people to see. And one of my favorite things that night, like I took a picture with me and Hot Tea here, and it's funny
because my name then, dude? Jesus Christ.
And Casey looked over and he's like, "What? You ain't gonna include me?" I was like, "Oh, my bad. I just didn't see you because we're distant." And then Casey took a picture and he said it right. He was like, glad to see my road friends.
Yeah.
So while we are all in competing outlets or whatever, I mean, like, I care for his well-being. I care for Oscar's well-being. And like you said, if we're on the road and shit happens, these are the two first individuals I'm going to go to and be like, can you fucking help me out here?
At some point,
I would do the same thing.
At some point, we became a traveling circus, right? It's a ridiculous life we all live. It's a ridiculous profession we all have. And it's a niche sport. And I think maybe, like you said, John, as the sport's gotten bigger, and you see more and more people show up. Like, listen, I'm not going to lie. Case in point, Abu Dhabi last time. There's a lot of journalists who I wouldn't know came back, and I wouldn't exactly be super friendly to all these people, like swarming in. You don't know the etiquette, you don't know the rules. I wouldn't be massively friendly to those people, but it's very hard not to formulate. Even if there's like people in the game that I wouldn't personally like. Let's go grab a beer. There's people like that, but
that's saying something.
No, but if
because you always grabbing beer.
This is true. I can grab a beer with you on the other side of the room. No, but if you could, like, the people I wouldn't want to grab a beer with, but if you show up day in day, like every single event, like it's hard not to at least formulate some sort of bond of like, fuck, here we go again, guys.
Yeah. In the trenches together.
It's just it's ridiculous not to.
Yeah. But no, I mean,
but still vote for MMA Junkie.
Of course, do not vote for the Mac Life. That is what we're saying. But I will be happy should Mac Life get it. I'm happy for anybody that gets it that wants to take it. So.
No doubt. All right, listen, that's the World MMA Awards. Make sure you do that. All right, listen, like I said, Oscar Willis is heading over to me. Hot Tea, as you know him now. He's going to be with me quite a bit. So I imagine I'll be buying a couple cocktails along the way to try to ply you of some of your time. Although it seems like we're going to have a lot of time because there's not much else to do.
He's going to be looking for the camaraderie. Just seeing somebody. If you guys are stuck in your rooms, as long as it's going to be.
Yeah.
I'm going to do a Mission Impossible scale out the balcony down to the bar, steal something out and climb back up.
That's awesome.
It'll be a long stretch, but we're looking forward to having some fights, some big fights, of course. We'll preview them all. We'll wrap them all up. We'll do all that stuff. Make sure you're at patreon.com/MMA Roadshow as well so you can catch all the half episodes. You want those. We try to have a little analysis, little thoughts afterwards. But if nothing else, just catch us here. And I'll just say until Abu Dhabi, let's go pack some alcohol in our bags and go quarantine. And until then, thanks for listening.